Let's bring in retired NYPD Inspector Paul Mauro. He's also an attorney and a Fox News contributor. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What are your takeaways from what we have learned about this would-be assassin at Mar-a-Lago, and what are your impressions of the way law enforcement reacted to him?
Well, according to all the facts that we know, law enforcement did the job that's expected of them. Let's not lose sight of the fact that they neutralized this person despite Donald Trump not being in Mar-a-Lago at the time. I would say a couple of things. First of all, the investigation now is going to be going along for two tracks. Obviously, there's going to be an investigation of what occurred exactly at the scene. There are protocols here. The Secret Service has a detail that responds to things like this. There will be people, in fact, on scene who were there already, whose responsibility is to respond to something like this, secure the scene, and make sure it's investigated fully as it's handed over to the FBI. So that team will take all the guns from anybody that fired. They will look for any video that could be pertinent. They'll do interviews, et cetera, make sure everybody is okay, obviously, after having an ambulance respond because the perpetrator's been shot. But then there's going to be the second track, which is going to go to North Carolina, as we've heard, because that's where the perpetrator is apparently from. That's going to be a whole different line of inquiry, and we'll have to wait to see what motivated this person, if he's part of a group, did he act alone, all the usual things we talk about in circumstances like this.
Paul, is it safe to say that law enforcement just naturally, when the VIPs are not at a place like Mar-a-Lago, that their temperature may be a little lower, recognizing that the protectees are not there?
I mean, look, human nature is human nature, but I will say this. They seem to have been prepared. Mar-a-Lago is a tough place to secure because, remember, it's a golf course that people can come play golf on. So, you know, there is that sort of dynamic here, and he was not there, as you mentioned. But that said, you know, they got to him apparently well before he got anywhere near the house. They did what they had to do. I would mention, of course, that we are involved in a number of high-tension areas around the world right now, including the imminence of what's happening in Iran. And so, you know, you have to consider us on something of a war footing, as this would-be shooter didn't realize Donald Trump wasn't there, but that doesn't mean that that's widely known. And there are all kinds of people here who might be looking to forestall any American action there. So you had to be aware of that. So I'm sure they were on their toes. It sounds like they were. All of this now, and it all occurs in federal land. I know that there's talk about the deputies from West Palm Beach, but they are almost certainly federalized in their role here, which means they're under the Attorney General guidelines. They will be guided by all the federal protocols in a circumstance like this. But under the facts that we have right now, it looks like everybody did their job. The place was secured. And then you do have to do, though, as they call it, a hot wash. You do want to see, were there any failures? Was there anything technical that should have gone off? Should there have been a tripwire relative to some of the video? Something like that. So they're going to look at all the things that should have been in place, certainly after the Ryan Ruth incident.
Authorities say the suspect raised the shotgun to a shooting position. In that case, it left the authorities with no choice, right?
Yeah, you're not required to let a suspect in a circumstance like that go any further than what we've heard described. According to the facts as they are articulated now, he was told to put down whatever he was holding. He puts the gas can down, but goes for the shotgun. That's it. You know, look, even under the facts as we have them now, he's walking inside the outer perimeter of the president's away residence, holding a shotgun as an unidentified. Realistically, at that point, you're pretty much covered in anything you got to do. But it sounds like, again, according to the narrative, and there will be body cams, as I understand it, some of the deputies were involved, and they have body cams. There's also, I'd be interested to see if any of the uniformed secrets, the Secret Service has a uniform contingent that they look like police officers. They're in uniform. I'm curious to see if any of them were involved. They likely would have body cams as well. So we'll get a more fulsome picture here. But as of now, under the facts, we have a lone wolf who is motivated by God knows what. Fortunately, law enforcement were on their toes because, sure, the president wasn't there, but we don't know who was. And very clearly, he wanted to start a fire, and that could have gotten a lot worse.
According to the Associated Press, the shooter was reported missing in North Carolina by his family a few days ago. And investigators believed he headed south and purchased a shotgun along his route. So there would likely be questions for his family and why they were alarmed about his disappearance, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can only hope that the family will be fully cooperative, that we don't have to resort to, search warrants and things like that. They'll probably paper it with search warrants and all that anyway. But these things go much, much easier when the family is completely cooperative. And you'll want to see what that initial report looked like as well. When they made the report to, I assume, local authorities when he became a missing person, there is a little bit of a misnomer, a misconception that you have to be missing a certain amount of time to be considered a missing person as an adult. And that's not entirely true in most jurisdictions anymore. If there are articulable circumstances that make you somebody that's something of a special category, as they're called, that you might be a danger to yourself or others, you can get everybody moving. The police will activate everything they need to try to find this person. So one of the lines of inquiry almost certainly is going to be what was done at this scene. Was there any indicia that he was heading to Mar-a-Lago? Did he have a history of threats of any sort? They'll be looking into that in the Secret Service files as well to see if they knew this person, if he'd ever come up on their radar screen as well. We're in the early stages of this. We'll get a lot more fulsome pictures soon. Unfortunately, he lost his life here, but I will say that it looks like law enforcement did what's expected of us, especially after what happened with Ryan Ruth.
Paul Mauro, thanks very much for your analysis today.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.